And here in the top right-hand corner of the map, ESC Cloud Kingdom, we have our red Zerg player winner of the first game from Team Liquid. It is Zenio. And his opponent, down in the lower left-hand corner of the map from the team Dignitas, it is Bischu, our yellow Protoss.
And so, like you said, Cloud Kingdom does produce some pretty good PVZs. I gotta say, though, I feel like this map is definitely a little bit better for Protoss. I mean, it's one of those maps where Protoss can take a pretty secure third base, and that is something that Zergs do not want to have happen, man. I mean, like, so much of ZVP right now is preventing the Protoss from taking that third base. If they get it, you know, if they can get that late-game bio ball going, and you only need about 3 bases to do that, Zerg can be in trouble sometimes. So you see a lot of what Zerg players do kind of focus around that third base, and we'll have to see if Zenio decides to play that way. I will say that I feel that this is a pretty good map for Mutalisks.
Sure,
So
I
that's
agree.
something that Zerg players have been kind of employing to sort of harass their opponent and keep them on their side of the map. So Zenio does have some options. It's not like, you know, it's an imbalanced map towards Protoss or anything like that. I don't think there's really any maps right now in competitive play that are imbalanced towards a certain race.
Yeah.
I think there's certainly some that favor them, but overall I think a lot of races have a lot of options.
Not any that are hugely out of whack.
Yeah,
And
that's the
this-
thing. I mean, if they were, they wouldn't be in pro play, right? I mean, I'm sure there's pros out there that disagree, but that's just because they play the races they play.
Of course. And actually, there's a gateway coming first out of Bischu. Now, I was going to remark initially, this would be kind of a clever spot to start a Forge Fast Expand because you hide your pylon, you make your opponent a little bit afraid, then you put a Forge down there, and you need another pylon anyway to wall this off if you want to do it truly properly and power both the buildings
That's kinda cool.
at once. But this is actually going to be a gateway opening, so
Yeah.
Bischu going to completely switch things up. Speedy Overlord is going to pick up on that here in a bit, but of course, Zenio did not send out a drone scout, so he doesn't have any clue that this is happening quite yet.
Well, way back in the day, we had a lot of Protoss players chrono boost out some Zealots early on when they do an expand like this to try to take advantage of the fact that Zerg just doesn't have a lot of powerful units early on in the game. So that could be part of what Bischu's plan is. We'll have to kind of wait and see a little bit. But I'm curious. I'm really curious to see where he decides to take this.
And Zenio does indeed see that gateway expand, so how exactly is Bischu going to follow this up? Well, it is gas number 1 coming up after the expansion, so, you know, if we see a Cybernetics core here and just kind of moves into normal tech, wouldn't be that out of the ordinary, and there it is. So this is going to have, you know, when you talk about players that are able to deny thirds from their opponents, this would hit a lot faster because that increased Warp Gate research time.
Yeah.
Zenio, though, already putting up his first gas, so he's not going to go for that 3-hatch no gas strategy that we see a lot.
If you see a gateway and you go for that 3-hatch, that's basically like saying, I want to lose this game.
Please kill this hatchery for me.
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I'm sure we have a completely different build now from Zenio, depending on, you know, what he was planning on doing. You know, there are a fair amount of Zergs that still do like to get gas on 2 bases, too, but you know, when you see a gateway like that, you can't go for that gasless 3-hatch. It's so risky if you do.
I definitely agree. So we'll see what Zenio wants to do now. Looks like he will have speed in pretty timely fashion. He's almost saved up to that 100 gas as well, and has an Overlord just kind of overseeing. Well, oh God, Overlord overseeing. Oh
that
boy!
Is what they do.
Oh God!
You did not speak a falsehood there.
No,
it was true.
I did not. But yet I still have this urge to go leave the room.
Overlords do oversee.
Yes.
Which is, you know, I always thought it'd be more preferable to the drones if they're dealing with overseers rather than overlords. You know, overlords are kind of like minions do this, but overseers are like,
yeah,
hi, I'd like to do your monthly status report.
I have actually thought about that before.
Yeah.
Overlords become overseers, so it seems like they take a step down in the Zerg hierarchy.
That's what happens when the corporation knocks their ego down a couple pegs, you know? Happens all the time. But you do get a little bit more armor, a little bit thicker skin.
That's true.
If you will. So, wow, major allegory to the corporate world in the Zerg hierarchy. Who knew?
Oh, God.
I see what Blizzard is doing now.
I see.
It's all becoming so clear.
All right. Well, Bischu wanted to put on a little pressure, of course, with his first couple of gateway units, but Zenio just sitting on 2 bases for now. He has not gone up to any other gas. In fact, pulled off when he hit 32 in addition to the 100 he needed for the Zergling speed.
Yep.
So, real question is, what is Bischu going to do to follow this up? It is going to be gateways number 2 and 3 for now. They are just finishing along with Warp Gate technology. Do we have a forward pylon anywhere?
Not quite yet. He's got, well,
that's a weird one.
It's, well, not really forward, kind of like sideways. I mean, I guess it is towards his opponent's base, but it's not Not quite there yet, but you know what? I mean, if you're going to go for the sort of gateway time, you want to have a couple pylons out there anyway.
Yeah.
A couple on the way, just in case one of them gets taken down. You at least have units coming in from a relatively close-ish area, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
And looks like 2 more gateways being started, so it will be a total of 5 now.
Yep.
And here comes a pretty good Zergling force, and will get trapped by a billion sentries sitting there. Could get force fielded out as well, but Forge finally following this up. Hallucination actually about to finish researching as well.
Yeah.
And as we can see, Zenio moving over to a Roach Warren and finally starting to get that 3rd base up.
Yep, and the thing is that what Bischu's doing right now is just like so old school, right? I mean, 5 gates on 2 bases after gateway expanding, and then going into that Forge for upgrades, getting Hallucination. This is a build like from a year ago, and it was so good back then. Zerg's kind of found ways to handle it, but the ways they handle it are very different from the way Zergs play the matchup right now. So Bischu kind of taking advantage of that to come back and do something that is going to be maybe a little bit more effective in this case.
Here's a question for you: do hallucinated units get the upgrades that you research for them? For example, if we saw any Impulse Crystal researched, would a hallucinated Phoenix have 6 range?
I believe it probably would. It probably would, because I'm guessing, and I have no idea the way they coded it, but I'm guessing they just have it produce a unit that has that different color scheme, but the same stats. But I don't know. I don't know for sure. I wonder if it does. It's a good question.
Interesting. The more you know. Well, Zenio actually doing a pretty effective job at knocking down the shields of these buildings, forcing a warp and not at the front where it can threaten his 3rd, but rather back at home to defend. So Photon Cannon coming up. But of course, now this push is lacking for Zealots, and may not seem like the biggest deal in the world, but could be that critical amount that Bischu needs in order to make this work.
Yeah, well, Roaches are pretty good against this Zealot Sentry composition. Lings help quite a bit as well, and that is not good for Bischu. He is just going to get absolutely dominated here.
Wow, loses 4 of his sentries in total up at the front. Now only has 2 to go along with
that
this.
Hurts.
Yeah, he much rather would have had a good number more there to help in kind of segmenting this force in half.
Yep. We also see a couple spores going down, of course. I mean, he did see that Phoenix, but he also wants to put down a spore or 2 just because the possibility of Dark Templar is there when you do this sort of gateway-type pressure. You do sometimes have some gas sitting around.
And taking a look around, this is still just 5 gates. Twilight Council coming up, plus on weapons finished. And Bischu is going to go to a 3rd base. Hasn't really been able to put on any pressure yet, so he is going to need quite the defense back at home. And of course, the Zergling does already pick up on it.
Yep. Ooh, fight at the top of the map right now. Zenio having to run away a little bit. He's not ready for this. So there's +1 weapons on those Zealots as well. Well, on all the gateway units, I guess, and that will make them 2-shot Zerglings, of course. So Zenio doesn't really want to fight that.
And looks like a couple of Zealots are warping in now to go ahead and dispatch of these Zerglings. Now, there's not enough Zealots here, and they will die, but they should buy enough time that these units can get down to save this. The Nexus, though, starting to get pretty low. Will Zenio be able to focus it? Is it going to get canceled? A lot of the Zerglings going down to 200 hit points and falling, but it looks like Bischu is going to hold on.
Barely saves it, man. Yeah, when those Zealots connected, that was about it for that attack, but, man, it was a little bit close, too close for comfort. Bischu's going to be a little bit more passive, I think, at this point.
I think so as well,
Yeah.
as that Nexus certainly still going to be hampered, even if it does survive, so going to be very low on hit points for a while. Zenio just making his way out, picking off a couple of pylons across the map.
Yep.
As we can see, though, he does have pretty well-developed army,
Yeah.
very good upgrades coming, and is moving over to some Hydralisk. Groove Spine's already coming up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, since we've got Bischu playing a little bit older school style, we have Zenio saying, all right, well, if you're going just largely gateway with upgrades and things like that, going into your tech a little bit later, I can just go Roach Hydra, try to just kind of overpower you with Roaches and, that high DPS that the Hydralisk brings. And if he can hit a timing where Bischu doesn't really have that higher tech out, then that's really when the Hydralisks are effective. They're not necessarily terribly good at a lot of points in the game right now for Zerg, but there's a few specific points where they are amazing.
Now, if Bischu's able to pretty much sit on 3 bases, though, and start moving over to Colossus production, maybe even Templar as well, as he does have quite a bit of excess gas, but it looks like he'll start burning through that here in just a bit when this robotics bay finishes up. Those Hydralisks are going to mean quite a bit less, but for now, they're going to be very effective.
Yeah, if he's going to move out with it, now is the time, and he knows that he's going for it. And the thing is he still needs to attack up this ramp. That's kind of the big drawback of this plan. is that he still has a fairly narrow place to go through, even after he destroys these rocks. Bischu, though, playing very defensive, trying to wall this off as best he can.
Right. And it looks like he does delay for long enough to push back that force at the front. Zenio trying to come around the side, but once again, there's this very short distance in between the natural and the third that's very easy to defend with units on that high ground. But Zenio doing something we've kind of speculated a lot at and why players don't take advantage of more often. He's just going to go through that high ground and split this force in half.
Yep, exactly. And this is going to be a really nice attack. He's got a 50 supply lead on Bischu right now. Good force fields, but it does allow the units to come from behind. Bischu suddenly trapped a little bit. Will he be able to defend?
Yeah, and it looks like this Immortal is going to get focused out as well, so these Roaches all of a sudden become a lot more powerful. More units continuing to filter through. Those high DPS Hydralisks starting to pick off the sentries one by one, and it's only a few Stalkers that are remaining.
GG.
And there it is, Zenio out to a 2-0 lead now for Team Liquid.
Yeah, exactly. That 3 base is only about as easy